You're listening to Tales of the Forsaken, a live play Fate Core game by Noble Jester Productions.
Unless something happens immediately, Gavin would be probably trying to scout a little bit on the ship, both to look for Dern, and also he's looking for basically the pieces and equipment, the various things that, he would need in order to make a collection, an assortment of remote control bombs.
Okay.
He wants things that are small enough that they could be hidden in, some random places, or, so probably no larger than a couple of fists,
Okay.
Something that could be pretty well hidden, but also something that has a transmitter that Glass could set it off.
Okay, got it. So you've already been through one part of the ship where you acquired a part that was to repair glass, so you probably would reasonably think that's a great place to look.
Yeah.
So I guess the main question would be, how long are you planning to take in doing this? Because I think that would dictate, the quality of what you're making, and then we can obviously get a roll for this, and then I guess the question would be too, how many do you want to make?
If the equipment that is needed, the pieces, the parts, whatever, the explosives aren't fairly evident and easy to find, he probably would give up relatively quickly. I mean, it's an idea, but he's going to be a lot more focused on following and not losing that signal, especially because he still has to do some repairs on glass, I'm assuming, before he can even follow.
Correct.
And probably seeing if he can find Dern would be a little more of a priority.
Okay.
So I guess not a ton of emphasis on that, but
okay.
if the pieces are there, if it's fairly, easy and quick for him to make, and he'd probably only make 3 or 4. He's not trying to make a ton of them, just enough that he can potentially place them in and around somewhere and then use them as a threat.
Okay, sounds good. So let's go ahead and get 2 rolls for this then. So first roll, let's go with investigate, and then second roll, we will do craft.
All right, investigate would be a +3.
Okay.
And then craft or mechanics would be a +4.
Okay, those are solid. So pretty quickly, in backtracking the way that you've been, realizing that Dern was kind of headed that direction, that's also the area where you could potentially find parts. You actually see that there is a hatch that's open to the outside of the ship that wasn't previously open before. You feel the wind whipping through there, you hear the water, so it's pretty clear Dern most likely went out this escape. So okay. I think it's pretty evident that would have happened there. So you see no evidence of him anywhere else on the ship.
Okay.
So with that, you're able to find the components you need to build these, and I think those are pretty solid rolls. So yeah, definitely you're able to find some explosive type materials, you find the wiring, the components, transmitters and things where with your knowledge and skill, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll take those with me, and then I'll take that drive that's needed to fix glass, and I'm going to try to find some sort of a float, something that can float that I can put those items on and swim it over to glass so that this drive doesn't just get soaked.
Yeah, not a problem. So with that roll, I'm going to say you easily find the mess bay, and there's foam and fabric type things. You're like, oh, these would float really well. Yeah. You're able to kind of cinch a couple of them together really easily. There's a chef's apron in there. You tie it together. You're create a little float for all of your components to keep them dry. So not a problem.
Okay. Well then, yeah, I think he would just go ahead and swim back out to glass, keeping an eye out for Dern if he sees him, but at this point, having seen how kind of shady he was and that he appears to have just disappeared, he wouldn't be real high on the priority list.
Okay. Sounds good, so not a problem. So you're able to load up your things, you get out to the entrance where you came in, create your little raft for your items, and you're able to swim back out to Glass, who is there at the surface, so no issues there.
Okay. Yeah. I would spend the time to, fix the drive for Glass so that he can actually move, and then I would wire up the explosives into his control panel so that he can set them off. And Gavin would probably take some kind of a big red button, just something that looks like it could set off the bombs.
Okay.
But not actually have it wired into anything. It's just for show.
Okay, not a problem. I would say what you could do is, you've got spare stuff around, and then with that fabric you got from the seat from the mess hall, it's a nice big colorful type thing where with the foam you can easily cut it, put some wires to it, easy enough. It looks like a switch or a button.
Okay. Yeah, and then once it's all fixed up, you get back into the cockpit and say, Glass, have you managed to keep track of the signal so we can follow after Cinder?
I sure have, Gavin. Looks like signal is getting weaker, but I have a general direction, and hopefully with you repairing this, we'll be able to get down there pretty quickly and do what we can.
Alright, let's try our best to stay quiet and stealthy. I think underneath the water with your hull, it should be fairly easy for us to stay out of sight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my drives will actually do pretty well. We've never experienced this, but something I'm aware of that we'll be able to propel through the water pretty easily.
All right, well, let's make sure we lock it down and not allow any water in. I don't feel like taking another swim.
So you begin to descend, you break through the water. You're in kind of a shallower type area that you've come in from the boat, and it's slanting away into the depths. Come through, there is some kind of sea life here. You're seeing just some typical fish type things. You keep heading down towards the signal that Glass has directed you to. Right now it's bright blue because you're in more of the shadows, but as you continue to dive deeper, it's getting darker and a deeper hue of blue. And you're starting to hear more of just the creaks from the pressure on the hull, just some different things that would be a little bit new versus being in the sea between, which is obviously an empty void. Now you're completely surrounded by the vastness of millions of gallons of water above you.
Yeah, I would think that Gavin would be kind of, I guess, metaphorically also feeling the pressure of just the idea of being down here, all the water around. I mean, he trusts Glass and he has a good understanding of Glass's hull and these sorts of things, but just the idea of being down this far underneath the water, completely surrounded, all this pressure, and those words that he had heard of follow the deep are kind of just still playing in his mind, and it's getting to him a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. I mean, it's a little different where you had this experience in the past with Fringe where, you were in this fight, he was destroyed, you get kicked out into the sea between, and you're able to breathe okay. You can survive out there. You being separated from Glass here, you're pretty much done. There's no safety.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as you're heading down into the depths, Glass speaks to you. Gavin, I'm picking up some signals. Something close by. I can't tell if it's one big thing or multiple medium things. I can't quite. Can you see anything yet?
Can I?
You look out. Obviously, Glass is transparent, so you're looking out. Can't quite see anything yet. It's getting pretty dark down here. I guess that's a good question. So, Glass does have exterior lights that could be turned on. Do you want to turn those on at any point?
As long as we can still see a little bit, no. I think if we get down into, absolute darkness where we can't see at all, then we might need to. But at least at this point, Gavin is still trying to stay stealthy and quiet and not let anyone know that they're following. I think think his only real hope at this point is that nobody knows he's here.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a tactic. So, okay, we'll keep with that so you do not have the lights on, and you are still at a depth where you are still seeing some light from the surface. And as you're scanning and looking out, you actually start to see some shapes in the distance, off maybe 2 o'clock or so. And as you're getting closer, you can actually start to see some light emanating from these shapes out there. Are you wanting to get closer, or are you just continuing to head down?
Well, Gavin would definitely tell Glass what he's seeing, which I'm assuming Glass can kind of also see that through Gavin's eyes. But yeah, he's just kind of communicating and says, yes, there are some shapes off about 2 o'clock. Looks like maybe some lights. Does the signal continue down, or do you think we've reached where they've gone?
The signal continues down. These other ones do appear to be heading approximately our direction. Based on scans, they potentially look to be organic.
Let's keep a little bit of a distance. Try not to get too close. Perhaps we can scan and see if we can tell what they are by the way they move or anything, but I'm nervous for us to get too close.
Copy that. As you continue forward, they do get a little bit closer, but as you're getting closer, you can begin to hear what these are. So, it's the sound of whales, essentially. So you hear the moaning, kind of the in and out of their vocals, kind of echoing, to each other. And as you get closer, you can see they actually have kind of like these bioluminescent type kind of stripes down their backs. These have two fins in the back, so kind of going in a rhythmic motion as they're kind of gliding through the water. They don't seem aggressive. Stories you would have heard if you hadn't seen them before just seem like they're kind of minding their own business.
Does Glass have speakers on the outside?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gavin would say, Glass, do you think you could record some of the sounds these whales are making?
Yeah, sure, we can do that.
Just take a sampling. I think it might be useful for us to have that in case we need to pretend to be a whale.
So you see like some different meters kind of show up on the control panel, and you see them kind of spiking, as they're making these noises, and he kind of pauses there, and maybe 20-30 seconds go by. Okay, Gavin, I think that's adequate. That's a pretty good sample.
Any chance you can turn on some lights that would look like bioluminescence?
Nothing that special. We just got our floodlights.
Well, let's keep those off for now.
Okay, are we done here, or anything else you'd like to do?
Let's not get too close to the whales, but let's go ahead and continue down.
So you begin to turn and dive deeper, and pretty quickly you're getting to some decent depth. So the light continues to fade, and now you're definitely getting to more of a darkness.
Okay.
As you keep going, I need you to make a will defend, please.
Oh boy. These have not gone well so far.
Mm-hmm.
No reason for them to start now. That's not terrible. That's a 3.
Okay. I rolled a 4.
Yeah, I don't really think I have any aspects that would make sense for me to use with a will defense, at least without knowing more about it. So
sure. Well, we'll see once it happens. So, as you experienced in the sea between, when that portal opened to this realm, something previously cut into your mind.
Yep.
This happens again. So you feel this momentary break of your connection with Glass, and something like a shard entering your mind. And you see yourself. You are just floating in the sea between. Not in a ship mine, just your body out there. As your body rotates to the side, you can see a pirate ship that is essentially docking on to Fringe. Half of it blown open. You can see them climbing out, going into, and you're just there, unable to move, unable to speak. You're just watching this happen. And you see them coming out with this crystalline core of Fringe. And you hear a voice cut into your head of Fringe. It says, "Gavin, you did this to us!" And then another voice that you've now heard, this is the second time, you hear, "Release!" And for a split second you see the flash of this pitch black, massive, soulless eye in the water, and then you're back in with Glass. And you do take a point of mental stress from that.
I don't know that I want to play this anymore.
We're just getting started, man.
I know. And I'm already, in reality, taking mental stress. Oh, man. All right. I mean, I would think that Gavin, as soon as his, kind of awareness returns, I mean, if he's at the controls, he probably jerks and, shakes, and then he's probably just sweating and maybe even tearing up a little bit, just trying to process what he's just seen. And he almost would, I think, ignore the voice and the eye as like too terrifying to even think about. His thought would be completely fixated on, did Fringe actually survive? Because he doesn't remember any of this.
Sure.
So he has no idea if this is just a vision or if it's a memory. And I mean, this would be tearing him apart right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a big black hole of memory. So like you said, is it something who read your thoughts and is trying to mess with you and just create something that's awful to think about? Or is it a memory coming back? I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, he'd probably just be sitting there frozen, unable to really do anything, just replaying that over and over in his head, trying to figure out if it's a memory or what.
Okay. You hear Glass speak to you. "Gavin, we were cut off on our connection again. I notice your vitals are spiking. What happened?"
Gavin says, Fringe, is that you?
"Gavin, it's me, Glass. Fringe is gone."
Are you sure?
That's what they told us. It's been so long since you've not had a connection with him. You saw it yourself. He was destroyed.
Glass, can you enter my mind? Can you read my memories? Is there any way that you can find or tell me? Did I see Fringe alive?
Okay, let me scan through a bit. Take a moment. You can feel just kind of sit there patiently, kind of opening up even more to Glass and kind of spending time and going through. That's not a memory I've seen before. I don't know if it's real. I'm sorry, Gavin.
He couldn't be alive. How could I have lost the connection without his death? I don't know. This can't be happening. Gavin would try to kind of compose himself, do his best to stop thinking about that and focus back on what they're supposed to be doing. He's not going to be able to find an answer to that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people that need him. He'd take a little bit to try to compose himself, and then he says, I'm truly sorry, Glass. I'm sorry for what I've done, what I've said. Please, let's move on. Something entered my mind again. I'm afraid there's some kind of a creature down here that is trying to communicate something to me. I don't know what it is.
We'll just try to keep things together. You don't have to apologize to me. incredible together, and I've never held it against you with what happened in your past with Fringe. I trust you.
Thank you. I'll try not to get you killed.
That's reassuring.
Well, I don't have a good history of... let's just move on.
So you continue down into the depths, getting darker, and at this point it's pretty much pitch black for a couple minutes, but Glass does kind of let you know that he's seen his scan of Torrent stop, and so you're actually getting closer now. So as you're approaching, you actually come up to like a seafloor. So you continue moving forward, and just a couple minutes later, you start to see some light in the distance. And as you get closer, you can see, essentially looks kind of like a underwater base. You're seeing the perimeter of it.
Okay.
So you feel pretty safe at this point that the distance that you are, unless they have some sort of technology you're not aware of to be able to scan and see you, you feel pretty good about not being seen. So as you're coming up, you can see kind of these varying size, different spherical type domes. And beyond the light, you can see kind of the colors of mixture of what looks like bone, but colorful type textures and different things you can see. It's kind of these yellow lights that are around. So it kind of starts to curve around where you can't really see it's going beyond the light. So whatever this is pretty big. So what you can see from your current vantage point, it's got to be at least probably 300-400 feet across as it starts to curve out. And you can't really see what's beyond that or around the edges because it is kind of this circular type connection. There's multiple different portions of this. You can see there's like connecting type tubes between these varying sized compartments to this. And Glass lets you know this is the last contact of where he saw Torrent.
Okay. Are we close enough that I can tell if there's any sort of docking hatches, anything like that where either you can just go into this structure or whether you have to dock on it, or how that works?
Yeah, so what you do is you get a little bit closer and then you spend some time kind of like strafing essentially over to the right, and you can see there's a larger section, and then based upon the angle that you're at, you can actually see it's like a moon pool essentially. So the water comes up underneath, and you could tell that that could be an entry point into here for even things as big as a ship like Glass.
Okay.
But the concern would be if taking Glass in here, that might be potentially a little risky to try to get him inside there. You don't know if you sneaking in versus trying to get an entire ship in there might be a little different.
Yeah. Gavin would say, Glass, can you tell from the water pressure on the hull, would I be able to survive out there, or is it too much?
Based on my scans, it's cold. There's a lot of pressure, but I believe I can get you close enough where you could most likely make it. I'd say your chance of success is 85%.
85% is good enough for me when Cinder's in danger.
Well, if you're leaving me here, what would you have of me?
Get me close enough, and then back off to a distance that you can come in as quickly as needed if things get tight in there, and then be ready if I need you to explode these bombs. I'll let you know, and have the whale sounds queued up in case you're discovered. Try to distract them or make them think that you're one of those whales.
Okay. Good luck to you. I hope to see you soon, and like you said, we're going to make it out of this.
I certainly hope so.
Quick question on your bombs. Would you have made them where they all go off together, or did you have enough skill in where you're hey, there's number 1, there's number 2, there's number 3, or what's your thought on that?
I think Gavin probably would have wired them together to all go off together.
Okay, sounds good.
He's not necessarily thinking of using them individually. It's more about using them together, or hopefully not using them at all. But if he does need to use them, using them together to do, he's probably, if possible, he's going to try to set them outside somewhere.
Okay.
On the hull of this thing, hopefully to crack it open. So he'd probably place them fairly close together.
Okay.
So I'd be looking for a structural point close enough to that, moon pool that my chances of setting them quickly and then entering would be, it wouldn't reduce that 85% too much.
Okay. I think it's okay. Glass was factoring in you're setting your bombs, so
okay.
You're okay on your chances of success. Okay, anything else you want to do in preparation before getting out into the water?
He'd take his normal gear, making sure that he has some kind of a water, don't remember what the word is, but soluble? Is that the one that disintegrates in water, or
yes.
is okay with water?
Yeah.
Well,
soluble,
I want the opposite.
So you want insoluble?
Sure.
Yeah.
An adhesive
waterproof?
That will allow these explosives to stick to the outside and not be, the adhesive destroyed by the water.
Not a problem. With your sort of tools and things you have would be kind of like a silicone type stuff that you could easily stick on there, and it's not going to do that. So not a problem. Before you're about to leave, Glass does say, while you absolutely can make this swim and the depth is not enough to crush you outright, I would recommend exhaling all of your air out before you go.
Gavin just kind of pales a little bit, and he's used to these sort of situations. He's used to being in danger, this sort of thing, but there is just an edge of he would prefer not to be in a situation like this. So he just kind of takes a few deep breaths, appreciating the air while he has it, and then says, "All right, I will be back, Glass."
Okay, so Glass kind of opens up a section underneath where kind of like the main ramp would be. You got the air inside, so it's creating this nice bubble for you, so you're able to slip into the water when you want to.
All right, yeah, Gavin would slip down into the water, keeping just kind of his head in, and take a moment to test the temperature, see if it's cold that is going to start hurting, or if it's cold that he can get used to.
This is cold that hurts. I mean,
okay.
As soon as you get your legs, you're like, oh geez, this is really cold. As you're dipping your body in and it starts getting to your core, you're like, okay, yeah, this is not that far above freezing.
Okay, then he's not going to screw around.
Yep.
He'll just, kind of lift himself up a little bit on the edge, breathe out everything he can, and then just thrust himself down and start swimming as fast as possible.
Okay, so there is some help along your the floor here. So there's rocks and things you can grab on and help pull yourself. I would like an athletics check to see kind of how this goes.
Can there be an enemy behind me?
You don't want that.
No, I don't. All right. Hey, that's a good roll.
That's not bad.
That's my first. Actually, I think that's my first roll in this game that has not been positives and negatives that evened out. So that would be a 4.
Okay, that's solid. So you're focused, this temperature of the water, I mean, it hits you, but it also kind of jacks up your adrenaline. So you're pulling yourself along, you're looking through and able to find a point you feel like would be a good place off to the side to be able to stick these. You can kind of see as you're going, you're kind of going past the moon pool a tiny bit, and you can see that it's more illuminated on the inside. You actually see figures of what looks like their types of ships that you had seen before where they loaded up Cinder and all that. You do not see Torrent there.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, he places those explosives and then gets in as quickly as possible, still trying to do his best to stay quiet. So he's going to try not to explode up out of the water, gasping for air.
Sure.
Trying to come up and quietly breathe again and take a look around to see if there's any guards or anybody that would immediately notice him.
Okay, sounds good. So with that awesome roll, I think that's going to go off without a hitch. So you swim up towards, and you kind of like hug the edge of the moon pool, so you can kind of pause, and you're composing yourself. You're looking up through, letting your eyes adjust. You're getting real close, being out of oxygen, but you don't see any movement up above, so you go ahead and break the surface of the water, lift your head up, and kind of adjust your eyes, and yeah, you don't see any movement in here. So what you do see, pretty decent size opening here, so you're probably talking, 30, 40 feet high, 100 to 200 feet across. Like, this is a pretty substantial section. So you have, walkways and the ledges that are up above the water level where people could walk around. You actually do see some essentially parked ships here. Not your typical looking things you would have experienced from like your ship mines. Mm-hmm. These look similar, but just they feel kind of just off.
Do they look like they're capable of both above, in the air travel and under the sea travel?
I'm not going to make you roll for this based on your character. Yes.
Okay.
Based on your knowledge, just much like Glass was able to do this, these look like ship mines.
Okay. How many are in here?
There are 5 in here.
Okay. So Gavin would climb out of the water and do his best to go to one of these ships and, kind of keeping himself hidden probably underneath it. Do his best to examine it and see if it is actually a ship mine or if it's just a normal ship. I feel like that would be pretty easy for Gavin to, here I am negotiating, but that'd be pretty easy for Gavin to figure out, since the RGN are the only people who are legally, who legally have ship mines. I feel like it'd be, the designs and the way that they grow are pretty unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first one that's closest to you look at, it is not like a complete ship mine. It looks more natural as far as what you would expect when you're describing. Looking over at the next one, it looks pretty much like a ship mine.
Okay. Oh boy.
Okay, so as you're investigating these, I'd like you to make a notice check.
Okay. Well, that would be unranked, so... Wow. I'm on a hot streak here.
I know.
My first ever.
That's pretty good.
That's a 2.
Okay. So as you're kind of investigating these ships and kind of processing the implications that they would illegally, whoever this is, has at least one ship mined, you kind of hear from where you came in the moon pool and see a little bit of movement, like out of the corner of your eye.
Okay. Is there anything in my immediate vicinity that I can hide behind? The leg of the ship or, whatever's holding it up, something that I can immediately duck.
Yeah, I think so. This is a pretty big area, and you've got these in here, so you can easily kind of duck behind the ship mine.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Gavin would immediately try to hide.
Okay.
Assuming that somebody's coming in.
Yeah, so are you trying to look and see where that movement came from, or are you just trying to completely hide, and kind of what's the intent?
Probably hide and more of listening than trying to stick my head out or anything. Okay,
so you don't hear any walking up on the area that you are. You actually hear the sound of water. So as if something is broken the surface from the water up into the moon pool.
Okay, well now you've got me curious. So yeah, Gavin would try to kind of look out and see what it is.
Okay, so what you see a couple humanoid type heads pop up into the water. There's one looks more feminine, one looks more masculine from what you can see.
Okay. Gavin would probably just wait and try to be quiet and see what happens.
Okay, so with your kind of hidden vantage point here, I won't make you do any sort of stealth check. I feel like you're hidden well enough. These two creatures, people, can't really tell. They start to kind of move across the surface of the water. They appear to be trying to be pretty stealthy as well. And then they start climbing up out of the water. You notice their lower half is basically like a giant fin. So based on your knowledge and studying, this would be essentially like a merpeople. So you see a couple of them come out of the water, and as they get up onto the deck, their lower half starts to kind of morph and transform into a couple legs.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That'd be useful. That would have been useful a couple minutes ago.
Sure, right? So they don't really appear to be like, it's not like they're looking for you, but they're kind of like you were, scanning, trying to sneak in. They climb up. Unless you're doing anything, they basically walk to a hall and out of sight unless you're doing anything.
No, Gavin would let them pass through. No need to try to do anything with them.
Mm-hmm.
Having taken in what's in here, his priorities need to shift to finding Cinder. So he's going to let them kind of pass through, and then he, in his mind say, Glass, I'm in. Is there any sort of indication based on your scans about what area of this station that Cinder might be in, or do I just start looking?
Gavin, are you facing the direction of me or away from me?
I would guess that with that connection, the mental connection, that Gavin would probably know the direction of Glass, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then...
So you're facing him.
Okay.
Yeah, you're facing him, so he lets you know, Gavin, to your right, if you can follow along there, that's where I'm picking up the signal for Torrent.
Okay. Is that the direction those mer people went?
Opposite direction.
Okay.
So you can see there's like another kind of like passageway that leads out of this moon pool to somewhere else.
Okay. I'm really tempted to try to spend the time in here to try to like hijack one of these ships or screw up these ships enough that they can't follow us, but I don't think I have the time. So
yeah, you really don't know what you're up against time-wise, so
yeah,
obviously do what you want.
Yeah, so Gavin is going to go ahead and still trying to stay stealthy, moving from cover to cover. He's going to go ahead and go over following Glass's directions and find a door and, to his right and try to open it and proceed.
Yeah, so not a problem. So you start walking that direction. You were behind this one ship mine. There's another one that was like kind of docked and lifted up right next to it. You walk past that, kind of put your arm as you're walking by. There's a third one that's kind of in the way between you and that passage. And you walk up, do the same sort of movement, put your hand on it, and something hits you. Something familiar about this ship mine. It feels like a reminiscence of Fringe.
Okay. Gavin would immediately stop and look for an entrance.
Yeah, you look around. The exterior doesn't look like what you would have expected for your memories of Fringe, but you're able to find the controls for an entry point onto this ship mine.
Okay. Gavin would try those controls, see if it will open, and if not, he would start working on it and try to break his way in.
Okay, yeah, you've got your handy tool. I'm going to say with that, you're able to do this. The controls look a bit different than what you would expect from like an RGN type thing. This definitely has a different feel to its technology and also its organic growth that is obviously the combination of these ship mines. So you get this door, this hatch open, you enter, and it's kind of it just feels, I know you've used this word in games we've played before, it just feels wrong. Like, there's kind of a beauty to ship mines and that the growth they have and this connections between their pilots. This one feels wrong. I guess that's the best way to describe it as you're entering. It's just the just an oppressive feeling inside of here.
Gavin has never tried to do this before, and if it's just not possible, that's fine. But he is having experienced several times now, his awareness kind of suddenly cut off from Glass. He's going to try to shield his mind from Glass for a moment. Not like his full awareness or anything like that, just the words he's about to say.
Okay.
Like he's trying to kind of cut off the Glass's window into his ears, if that makes sense. You know, Glass's ability to hear what Gavin hears, to feel what Gavin says.
Okay. I'm just going to have you roll for this. He's not like actively fighting this. I just kind of want to see the outcome.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to set like just a standard difficulty on that of like a 1.
Okay. Just a straight roll, or would I use will?
Let's go and use will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'd be a 4.
Okay. That is a success.
Okay. Cognizant that may have bad complications later.
Sure.
Gavin does that, and then he's taken some steps inside this ship, and he's going to, speaking fairly low, he's going to say, "Fringe, are you here?"
Yeah, so as you say this and you're reaching out, kind of going back to what we're talking about with it feeling wrong, you've heard stories before about pirates trying to steal ship mines or what might be done. This, from what you're gathering, essentially it's like this looks invasive towards this. This looks invasive towards this ship mine. So like what makes the life and what is really interesting about a ship mine having an entire like personality and life, this is just void of that. And they've essentially like kind of taken it hostage and almost like kind of zombified, for lack of a better word, of what this is. So there is no response to you. You kind of just see some kind of red blinking lights and kind of more of a invasive type structure that's housing this crystalline ship mine. Since you're on the inside, you can see just wrong.
Being able to see it, would Gavin know it's Fringe?
I think based upon you cutting off Glass even momentarily to say this, and because you had that past, yes, this was at one point Fringe.
Okay. Gavin is going to walk over to this crystalline structure that at least was at one point Fringe, and he's going to reach out and put his hand on it and just try to connect in some way, probably failing, it sounds like.
Yeah, you don't have any sort of like meaningful connection. Like you feel like what would have existed to be able to connect with a ship mind has just been stripped away.
Gavin would stand there for a moment, his hands on it, his shoulders kind of just slumped, and so many thoughts are running through his mind. And then his hands kind of curl into fists, and just absolute fury passes through him. At this point, that connection to Glass is probably reestablished, and he is just furious. He would look for something and do his best to either break that crystalline structure, if it's possible even to physically shatter it, or he's going to blow this ship up.
Okay. I think you would know that, just with tools or smacking it with something heavy is not going to be enough to actually destroy this. So, did you put all those explosives on the outside, or do you have any left?
He would have put all of them on the outside. So, gonna start hacking into the controls and do something to set up some sort of an explosion.
Okay. definitely gonna get a roll for this. So this is not technology, like the languages and things that are on here are completely foreign to you.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and let's get a craft roll to see if you'd be able to do that here.
Okay. Man, my streak is gone. That'd be a 3.
That's enough. So essentially what you could do with this is you could kind of like put it in a state of, what's the word? Like an overload, essentially. So it's not like instant boom, but you could set things in a way with how they've got this controlled and wired where at some point this will get to a point where it's going to self-destruct, essentially. How long? Don't really know. That's not something you would be aware of. But based on how you've done this, it's going to jack up things, and it's eventually will either set fire, explode. It would destruct.
He'd set that up, and then he'd leave. He'd kind of walk past and put a hand on the crystal again, and then walk out. And at this point, Gavin is absolutely just incensed. He's so angry. He's not even really trying to stay stealthy anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, he's going to turn and walk down that hallway.
Okay. Well, then I won't have you make a stealth check because you're not trying to be stealthy. So,
I mean, he's not like,
no.
Running down the hall screaming. But at this point, Gavin has essentially done everything in his power since that moment to reshape his personality, to curb his desire for violence, to run away from violent encounters, to use creativity and everything he can to avoid hurting people, because he's hurt people before and it caused the death of Fringe, or so he thought. But at this point, he's so beyond angry. That's done.
So, but with this, with your trouble aspect, afraid of causing harm, as you're exiting what's left of Fringe in this new ship, you have this thought in your mind, because if this goes off, I'm not controlling this. I could hurt Cinder, I could hurt people, so I'm going to compel you with that aspect to turn back and undo what you've done. Unless you want to spend, fate point to not.
I genuinely think this is a real turning point for Gavin.
Okay.
Which hopefully this doesn't screw things up too much, but I think I would spend the fate point to resist that compel.
Okay.
At this point, Gavin is probably, yes, he still is going to go rescue Cinder, and there is just an aspect of he wants to destroy that as, for a lot of reasons. It can be a distraction, it can be, it will be useful for that to explode, even if he doesn't have any control over when it explodes.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he's just so incredibly angry at this point. We've kind of moved past I don't want to hurt people to I want to hurt these people.
All right, then we will move forward with that.
Okay.
So you proceed down this hall, your fury driving you of kind of witnessing pretty intense things. Cinder's been taken captive. You've had this thing invade your mind, and now kind of your worst fear with Fringe. Also now replaying, man, everything that he would have had to have been through from that point of what you caused to now get to here.
That's
to be
all Gavin's fault.
Yeah. So you proceed on. You're moving through. You're paying attention to what's around. Thankfully, you haven't seen any other things here. At one point, you kind of stop and see something walk by. Kind of looks like a fish person, like kind of green arms and legs, kind of a weird, like no neck, kind of big head, kind of like fish-headed type person. Kind of walks by at one point. You have no issue there.
Different than the mer people I saw.
Correct.
Okay.
And then you continue forward. You go through, these hallways, like kind of the way this is built, it's kind of similar to like what a ship mine would be, even like these capital ships. It's like a combination of mechanical with organic and the mix of arcane, kind of all these things put together to do this, to create this. So you go through these halls, you go through kind of like a mess hall, you go through some barracks, there's like an armory looking type place. Do you want to stop in any of these, or are you kind of like just on a mission to find Cinder and Torrent?
I guess he'd probably stop at the armory and see. He's not necessarily looking for a weapon.
Okay.
But anything that, is explosive in nature.
Okay.
At this point, one of his goals has become, yes, he wants to rescue Cinder and Torrent, but this station is not staying intact when he leaves.
Okay.
So he's now shifted to destruction mode.
I love how this is like, okay, I'm going to create this character that's just going to run from everything, and now you're like, I'm Rambo.
Well,
I'm messing with you.
Look, I handed you a very tortured backstory.
I did.
And you are torturing me with it.
I definitely plucked those strings. So go ahead and make an investigation check for me here in the armory. See if you can find explosives.
Okay. That's a 2.
So looking around, you can see it's mostly kind of like open cabinets where there look to be kind of like energy rifles. There's some trident type looking things that have some sort of like battery type things on them. So fortunately not any explosives that you're seeing here, but there are some various types of weapons around.
Okay. Gavin would probably go ahead and take an energy rifle just to have it. He has 0 skill in that, so he's not going to probably end up using it, but just to have it.
Okay.
In case, maybe he can give it to Cinder.
Okay. All right. You grab one of these, you proceed, and you start to hear talking and sounds and things kind of as the hallway is moving. It's kind of curving around to the right as you've kind of been going, so you can hear that down the hall. You proceed, and you can get to a point where you now see this one opens up into a very large space. Do you want to enter?
Having now spent a few minutes, the anger hasn't subsided, but he's thinking a little more coolly.
Okay.
And he's not going to just walk right into the middle of this space. He'd probably try to, not really like sneak, because I'm assuming there's no places to hide in this hallway, but, keep his back to the wall and kind of try to get to a point where he can hear and maybe see what's going on in this room without just standing in the doorway.
Okay. Sounds good. So as you get up closer and this hallway is about to open into the space, you can kind of see a little more clearly now what's in here. Just inside, there are 2 kind of like cylindrical, like structural pillars that are going from the floor to the ceiling that obstructed you a little bit. So those are maybe about 10 feet into this space. About 10 feet beyond that, you can actually see a cage with people in there, and pretty easily to make out Cinder is in this cage. So this is kind of off to the side just a little bit. Looking beyond that, you can see a pretty well illuminated far end of this section of this opening, and you can see now more of these fish type people, as well as these kind of muscular serpent-like creatures with their bottom half, but they have muscular arms and almost like kind of snake-like heads with kind of flaring stuff kind of coming out around the sides of their heads as well. Just a quick glance, there's probably 10 to 15 of these creatures in here that are at the far end of this space. There's some different structures and things, some glowing lights around, and then a massive glass panel at the far end of this wall looking out into the vastness of the ocean. You pause for a second and you look out into the water and you see that eye that you'd seen before, a part of something massive. From here you can see you're about level with the face. So assuming where you're located in this, there's a major drop off at the other end of the space that you hadn't seen before. See this greenish skin, this black eye, tendrils coming down, it's motionless, and that's where we'll end.